Hey guys, are you taking the ACT soon and wondering how you can get your best score? If so, in this video, I'm going to go over some classic tutor hacks and strategies. I've been tutoring for over a decade and a half, so I've heard lots of spiels from lots of different books, lots of different tutoring companies that I've worked for in the past, and I've compiled here some of the most classic basic tips to just get you on your way with ACT prep. If you're wondering who I am, my name's Brooke. I've scored perfectly on the ACT as an adult. I've also coached a couple of students to perfect scores. We've also had a few students score perfectly who've taken our online course at SupertutorTV.com, which you can check out there. We've also got a couple of math books up at Amazon.com for the ACT. If you have used either of those and you like them, email us. Let us know. We'd love to hear your story. info@SupertutorTV.com, and subscribe to our mailing list while you're at our site, SupertutorTV.com/subscribe. Find us on social. Let's get started. Awesome. Classic tutor hacks and strategies and tips. Number one, this one's very classic, process of elimination. I'm sure lots of you have heard it, and I'm sure some of you are like, Brooke, duh, process of elimination. What is process of elimination? Well, it means instead of looking for the right answer, you look for what's wrong. And sometimes it's easier to find what's wrong than it is to find what's right. So always use process of elimination. Particularly on the ACT, this can be helpful in the reading section because a lot of times you have questions that have answer choices with details that are somewhere in the passage. And if you can find that detail in the passage in a way that absolutely doesn't answer the question, it's very unlikely to be the answer to the question. So if you can't find the answer choice, the specific answer choice that is right, but you can find all the ones that are wrong, and you can see that we're talking about them in different contexts and in different ways, and that detail has nothing to do with this question, boom, you can get rid of it. So that's a good tip with process of elimination on the ACT reading. Number two, remember that things get harder as you go in the math section and in each science passage. What does that mean? It means in the math section that the first question is often a lot easier than the 60th question. So I generally recommend most students don't do the math out of order, because if you do, you're giving up really easy questions potentially and working on hard ones that might take more time. That being said, I do have occasionally students who are going for a 35 or a 36 in the math, and they want a fresh brain to tackle the really tough questions, so they start at the end and they work backwards. Whatever works for you is cool, but just understand how the test works in that way and progress accordingly. In the science section, it's a little bit different. The science gets harder as you go within each passage. So it doesn't really get harder as you go from one to the end of the test altogether, but it does get harder as you go within each passage. Generally, the easier questions in each little science passage are toward the beginning, and the harder ones are toward the end. I call those harder ones synthesis questions, meaning you have to draw lots of information together and then make an analysis, whereas early questions usually just require fact-finding and regurgitation. So if you are on a late question and you find yourself simply fact-finding and you're not doing synthesis, scratch your head and ask yourself if you missed something, because you likely did. If you're on an early question and if you just look at a chart and you're like, okay, duh, that's the number, this seems too easy, and it's the first question out of the gate on a particular passage in the science, it's probably right. So that's how understanding how difficulty increases over time in the science can help inform how you approach answering the questions. It can just be a little check for you. Should I try a little harder? Should I give up a little easier? How much effort should I put where? Cool? Okay, number three, always put an answer. You are not graded down for putting a wrong answer on the ACT. So even if you skip something, always put some letter down. Okay. Number four, you can do the reading questions out of order, and you can do the science and reading passages out of order. In terms of how to do them out of order, well, some people like to do the main idea questions last and the detail questions first. I personally kind of like to do the main idea question first because it helps me get a handle on the main idea of the passage, and that main idea informs everything as I go, and then I can kind of fly after I figure that out. So it's up to you how you do them out of order, but figure out what works for you. In terms of doing passages out of order, same deal. I like to start with something I'm pretty good at, and then I like to go to something I'm really bad at so that I have the energy to tackle it, because I don't like to put things that I'm bad at last. Now, some of you might have the opposite because you never finish the thing anyway, so you want to put what you're bad at last. We have some other videos on pacing. If you really want to dig into this and think about it more, you can check out those videos. But in any case, know that you can experiment with doing certain passages earlier, other passages later. Figure out in your practice what you do better, what you do worse, and then make a plan to do things out of order if it helps you. If it just confuses you, do what works for you. There isn't a tip that works for everybody when it comes to doing things out of order. It's really personal preference and maximizing your brain cells, your energy, etc. Number 5, skim your reading passages. Good tip, you don't have to read every detail. Inevitably, I have a lot of students who will skim at least 1 or 2 passages on the ACT reading section. I recommend skimming the easy ones. The truth is, the ACT is very literal with lots of its questions. You go back, you find the answer, you lock it in, you see it, you put it. It's a little bit different from the SAT in the sense that it's much more straightforward. Because of that, you can often skim a passage and not really miss anything. You might feel a little bit lost in the process, but if you can just map the passage and know where things are, you're going to be okay. I also have some people who just don't read the passage at all. That's not what I recommend for most students, but if you're ESL, not reading the passage at all might help you finish on time, and you can experiment with that if you don't speak English as a first language. Next tip is back solve in math. What is back solving? It's using the answer choices. So sometimes if you don't quite know how to set up a problem, and it's a word problem, you can look at the answer choices, pick one out, and ask yourself, if this were true, what would calculate out, right? This is a great tip if you're stuck. It can be slower though than doing a question the right way, so we don't recommend that you back solve everything, but if you're in a pinch, it's a good out or way to address it if you don't think it's going to take too long. Number 7, eyeball geometry shapes and lengths if it doesn't say not to scale. If you're running out of time and you see a lot of questions with figures, you can sometimes eyeball them and totally get them right. So don't waste too much time if you're feeling stuck on geometry or picture-based questions. Eyeball it, guess, and those are sometimes the easiest ones to guess. So give it a go if you're running out of time. The next tip is go back to the passage first in the reading. That means don't look down at your answers first. Go back and try to answer from the passage as much as possible first. So read the question. Don't treat it like multiple choice. Treat it like an open answer question if you can, and you'll find that oftentimes that helps you hone in on the answer a little bit more quickly than trying to consider a bunch of answer choices that you have no context for. The next tip is make up numbers. This is a math tip. It generally works when you have variables in the answer choice. I go into this more in depth if you want to see some example problems in our math hacks video, so check that video out if you want that and other math hacks as well. Number 10, use your pencil. So whenever you're approaching the ACT, sometimes managing all the details, remembering everything can be tough, so use your pencil to create an auxiliary brain on the paper. Take notes, work out your ideas, write out logic, take little notes in the margin, underline details that work for you. Remember, this is a test you can write on. I know a lot of you take standardized tests in places like California where they tell you don't write in the booklet because they're trying to reuse them with a bunch of students. That's not the ACT. You're totally allowed to write on the page. Do it. It's going to help you. Number 11, know the test. It's always good to be familiar with the test before you take it. Don't go in and take it totally cold. Review the test, understand what it's asking, understand how it's formatted. That's going to help you out. Number 12, have a pacing plan. We have some videos on timing and pacing tips, so I recommend that you check out those videos if you want more in-depth ideas, but make sure you walk in the door with a pacing plan. This test is tough on time, and it's one of the biggest areas of mistakes that students have. So make sure you know how to do it time-wise, or what you're doing or what your plan is. How long are you going to take on each question? How much time do you have for each passage in the reading? All that kind of good stuff. How much time do you want to try to allot at the very end to go back and review anything you have questions on, if that's your game, or do you just want to go right up to the end and finish? Do you even want to plan to not finish the test because you know you're going to do better? Do you want to plan to finish 3/4 of the test? Whatever your plan is, make sure you have one, because pacing is everything on the ACT. Awesome, awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed these tips. I know I went fast, but if you want me to go into more depth, I talk about a lot of these ideas in some of our other videos here on our channel. So be sure to check out more videos, take notes, think about these ideas, and hopefully they will help you do wonderfully on your ACT that's coming up soon. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you all soon in some more videos. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.